Welcome to another edition of TSA Safety Matters. I'm your host, Greg Kerr from Stakeholder Relations, and today we're with John Marshall, TSA's Fuel Safety Director, for a few thoughts on barbecue assembly and some of the concerns around that. So thanks for being with us today, John.
Oh, my pleasure, Greg.
Now, this recently came to light. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what occurred and what we did about it.
Okay, so first of all, Greg, this is not a new requirement. This is something that's been in place for many years now. And like other issues that kind of resurface from time to time, and when TSSA receives information, we have to act on that, and we do appropriate follow-up, and sometimes it turns into a very comprehensive inspection or investigation. So in this case, it came to our attention that there were fuel-fired equipments, in this case barbecues, being assembled by people who didn't hold a certificate for that purpose. So kind of one of the backbones of regulatory regime is that people have to be properly certified to carry out the activities they're doing or the services they're selling. So in this case, the people who are assembling barbecues for some retailers didn't have those appropriate qualifications, and so were issued cease and desist orders to stop that until we were able to work with them and evaluate the situation.
Now, from what I understand, that if you're a homeowner and you take it home, you can assemble it yourself. But if it's a retailer, then that's where we step in. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, Greg. So for homeowners, they're exempted under the regulations in terms of having to hold certificates and training and things like that. And so the crux of the matter is really expectation. So a homeowner takes home an appliance and assembles it. They know they've kind of taken responsibility to assemble that in accordance with the instructions. Whereas somebody who would buy a pre-assembled unit has an expectation that it's safe and ready to operate, so that they can take it home and hook it up to their tank or their fuel line, and they're ready to go and they're safe. So we as the regulator have to ensure that the people who do that work are qualified and understand and are able to identify hazards associated with that, and make sure that when the equipment does go home with the homeowner, that it is safe and ready to operate.
Mm-hmm. Now, some might argue that they don't foresee it as a reasonable risk, given that we even allow homeowners to assemble it themselves. So what's our response to something of that nature?
Well, I mean, that's true, isn't it? I mean, you could argue, the level of risk with the different activities, but when something goes out the door, the expectation is that it's safe and okay to operate, and so we as the safety authority have to ensure that the people that do that can do that correctly, and that are able to recognize that in assembling a barbecue, for instance, to be able to identify a hazard such as perhaps a cracked tube or something along that line, that if it wasn't, then if a qualified person wasn't doing that work, wouldn't identify it, and we put the homeowner at hazard,
mm-hmm.
or at risk for an injury.
Mm-hmm. So I guess too, it's kind of almost like a slippery slope too. Like if someone says, I don't need to be certified to assemble this, since it's not much of a risk, I don't need to be certified to service it either.
Well, you're right. It is a slippery slope, and TSSA is not aware of any direct incidents as a result of this situation yet. But we really have to assure ourselves that, and be in a preventative mode to make sure that it doesn't. So to say it's a low risk and characterize it that way is fine. But we still have to assure ourselves that the proper steps have been taken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when the regulation was written, it's done in a comprehensive, holistic manner, not
Absolutely,
in a willy-nilly on an individual basis. So, to that end, John, what can someone do if they have an issue or if they're seeking a variance?
Absolutely. So one of the things we do is we'll work with our clients and look at, as you mentioned, there's a variance process that we have in place. So what we do is look at equivalency. So we would look at a training program that they might have to satisfy ourselves that the people who are performing this activity have the knowledge and skills necessary to ensure that when the barbecue is finished, it is a safe appliance to operate.
Mm-hmm. And it could be an example of someone who may not have certification, but they received training from like a G1 or G2 or some on the field kind of
Well, what we'll look
experience
at
of some sort.
is we'll have somebody who wants to offer that service will send us their training package, and we'll evaluate it with our staff to make sure that it captures all the essential elements in there about safety and assembly and those kinds of things. And if we're satisfied with that, then we can provide them with a variance to say that they can train their people in accordance with this program, and they're qualified to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the two cases where you've worked or found issues with certain retailers, what was the reaction when you actually addressed it?
The reaction was very positive, and it was really more them of trying to understand the situation and the whys and wherefores of it all, and all were very supportive and said, we get that, we understand the safety requirements here, let's work with you, and we're happy that you're working with us, and we'll find a good resolution to this situation.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's in a timely manner too, because we're coming up to the May 2-4 weekend, and we know people are going to be wheeling out those barbecues.
For sure,
So.
Absolutely. This is seasonal type work, and it came to our attention just at the start of the season. But we're working with those folks to make sure that businesses aren't negatively impacted over this.
Mm-hmm. And they want the same thing too, right?
They want this. We're all after the same safety outcomes. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for being here today, John.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Again, have a great, safe and happy Victoria Day weekend, and safe barbecuing out there. Stay tuned for more TSA Safety Matters.